JF. Add more flavor.
Yeah, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, my good people, what's up, what's up, what's up? It's Motivation Wednesday once again here at JF. That's Joburg flavored for those who are unfamiliar with it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're listening to this in the day. Once again, as per the norm, we have a wonderful human being as a guest. Hint, hint, roses are red, violets are blue, bullets are made of lead. Somebody might shoot you. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was me trying to make a poem, but hey, it's fine. Ladies and gents, we have Machaha Ngonyane,
Yeah.
who also goes by the name Poetic Soul.
My man.
What's good, my brother? How you doing, bro?
I'm good, and how are you, man?
I know, go romantic, go romantic. All is well. All is well.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much for coming through, man. We're so happy to have you.
I'm happier to have been invited and be part of this amazing movement.
Washa too. Wow, man. We do what we can. And here on Motivation Wednesday, well, the title pretty much says it.
Yeah.
We all about telling people stories
It's true.
from their perspective so that they may be an influence to someone else.
Yeah.
And they may inspire others. You know, there's youth that are looking up to us. There are even older people who maybe feel they made mistakes somewhere. You know, and you never know who you might touch.
You know what you're saying, there's youth that looks up to us, and you're saying there's older people. In my head, I'm thinking, I hope they're not looking down.
No, they might try. But then that's motivation to us, because if they look down on us, flames shall be shown.
I hear you.
Oh, man. So yeah, you are a poet, amongst other things.
Young love of my life, Paul.
Love of your life, I'm fine.
Yeah, man. I've been at this, to be honest, since preschool.
Yeah. What's the name?
It's been that long.
Preschool. But how did you know?
Now I can trace back.
Uh-huh.
Then I didn't know. You know, graduation, preschool, yonke nje preschool in a graduation. No
Yeah.
matter it's crèche
Exactly.
or preschool.
Yeah.
That's that day. The reason I'm dating it back as far as preschool is how when we prepared for the play, it was Garden of Eden. I was acting God, looking for Adam and Eve in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
There are lines which we rehearse probably for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to say this. You're going to say, like, okay. Yeah. Then on the day, I remember myself branching off from what was rehearsed through and through. And to the parents that were there, most of them were amazed, thinking, where did you get that?
Who wrote that script?
And the journey then has been an amazing one. Obviously, at that point, it was not defined as true. It's poetry. And over the years, what has been happening was an issue of being attracted to public speeches at the level of maybe presidents and public speaking generally. I remember even with schooling, one of the extracurricular activities that maybe I found myself being interested in were things like debate, public speaking. Well, obviously at the maybe schools that one got a chance to attend, public speaking was not recognized as an extracurricular activity. The one thing that was available as a platform was debate. We fortunately went to the same high school.
Yep.
I remember the first head boy we had, Sandy Lepembe. He was an eloquent speaker. And of the many things he was talented in, the one that drew my attention was his public speaking. So me throwing back to all of this is pointing a direction as to how do I eventually land into defining my space as poetry. Then there are, what do I call it, influences that have shaped up my art. It started off as public speaking. I thought maybe I'd be an expert in that. But I think the first public platform that I started on was Assembly Square 2007. We're in Form 5.
The fine art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, I was thinking, I'm in Form 5. Angesabi mundu. So, if anything, I'm a senior.
Nothing to lose. For crying out
Exactly.
loud.
There is, before that platform, church has been a big influence.
Yeah.
Where the usual thing that happens in churches or in the churches that we've been exposed to, there is drama. And well, you find that maybe the people who are maybe directing that mostly are at the profession of teachers.
Yes.
So they have an insight into art. So they try the drama, they try the poetry. Because for some funny reason, drama goes along with poetry at every play. It's never
aligned, eh?
Yeah, it's never a case of poetry being out there alone. So you find that maybe when the drama was there, when poetry was an option, I'd want to try poetry. See, it was a case of let me try this, maybe it works. Let me try this, maybe it works.
Yeah.
Until I got my space. Yeah. Then, as we would have it, the human, as everyone would go through it, there's growth.
Exactly.
You start off by maybe getting one to write for you. You do the lines like as far back as preschool,
Exactly.
dramas at church, and the environments that we're in. I'm glad that we are touching on Motivation Wednesday. It's quite, I won't say unfortunate. Let me just put it as it is. I was in a space where I didn't attract a lot of friends. I didn't fit in a lot of environments. Self-esteem was an issue. And the one thing that would help me cope, especially at an environment of teenagehood, high school, was writing.
Yeah.
Which is also another influencer into how I eventually described my space as poetry. Writing was a big part of me. The funny part to it is when I was in Form 1, I was the guy who was writing letters for the seniors. When they were
A revelation. Yay.
when they were afraid of maybe approaching the girl, I'd be the guy with the words. Exactly. And over the years, the writing has been also another big space because poetry requires that you write and the courage to eventually stand in front of people and perform.
Yeah, and recite what you've written.
Yeah, so that's also one other space that has played a big part, writing. I wrote a lot because of trying to cope with not fitting in a lot of environments.
Yes.
Self-esteem was an issue.
So it was more of your release, in a sense,
Yeah,
from all these pressures around you.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and now getting to be exposed to a lot of environments, like fast forward tertiary, where there's internet
Oh, yes.
readily available. We now tap onto platforms like YouTube.
Exactly.
Apart from YouTube, you start interacting with people who are not from the same environment as you are. At that level, there are now defined spaces. There's the sporting codes, there's clubs, there's political structures.
Yeah.
Behind the cafe was a poetry group.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's where I was also thrown to that. And seeing people doing what you love and enjoy freely and
Out in a public space. Just.
and at a level where they even cause goosebumps on your body, you start thinking,
Yay.
let me learn from these people. So those are other influences that help me shape my craft. Spoken word, the full exposure to it was at tertiary level, where I attended a lot of poetry sessions. We got the privilege of attending tertiary with some of the soil members, if you remember.
Yes.
And
Siyababuka.
they're famous today and
Yeah.
all over the world. At some point, we got a chance to share space with them. Me bringing them into this discussion is bringing about the issue of now diversifying within the poetry, which I think to someone listening and thinking around the issues of how do I grow from it, how do I maybe make it more interesting. There's music, a cappella to be specific, which adds flavor. Just like your usual plate of food, when you add salt and spice into it, the taste is then different. I feel like I've said a lot of things.
Which is key. That is the way you get Motivation Wednesday. You leave yourself empty for the next person.
Yeah, those some of the things that have maybe shaped up what I define as my poetry. And
today
I touched on church.
Yeah.
A big part of my life. Yeah. And that's also a big platform because you, more than being impacted spiritually, you learn on the codes, if I may call it, on how to speak in front of a crowd or an audience.
Yeah.
Pastors have displayed that skill in many different shapes and formats. Church has been a big influence on how I present my craft. And obviously at tertiary level, I was studying public relations management. Yes. One of the key things there was presentations. I was fortunate that I was coming into that space with experience in poetry. Exactly. So presentations for me were not a problem.
Flowing.
I remember most of the years when the assessments would not shape up, I would definitely be sure that presentation would help me pull through.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, that's also another key aspect in being a poet. Presentation skill, breathing stuff, gestures, and all of those things. And
so this thing is actually trickier than some of us think, because some people just think that you just get there and recite words. Gani,
there's a
just
lot.
breathing technique.
There's a lot.
Gestures. Because I notice when you close your eyes occasionally, the movements of your hand and your steps, with every word when you flow. Tap, 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 tap. Okay.
Yeah, it's also some of the things that play a big part. I'll make an example of maybe one of the poets I look up to, Ezekiel, an American gospel poet. He brings in a lot of these things that maybe we probably are blind to. Presentation, as far as voice techniques, he's one poet who uses a deep voice, which I believe, okay, you can't go to a shop and say, can I have 6 meters deep voice? It's one of the things that maybe you naturally
have it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. But I strongly believe in a deep voice when on stage. And okay, let's say maybe you are not given a deep voice, but I don't believe in your tone of voice when you speak generally to your friends and when you are on stage. Yeah. That's where there needs to be a difference. Okay. Sometimes, not even sometimes, most of the time, when I'm on stage, I'm loud with or without a mic.
Yeah.
For the purpose of get
authoritative. Plus, you're getting our attention. Go to okay.
Yeah, it's a very key aspect. It needs for you to break out of your shell. Yeah. Be out there as much as you can. Like you mentioned, there's movements on stage. There's things like closing your eyes, and all of those things.
It's to one with your words, in a sense.
Yeah, it's to keep the people engaged, because there are smaller techniques like you then, as a poet, for growth purposes, start paying attention to elements like concentration levels, levels, or rather, not even concentration levels, concentration span.
Mm.
There are time frames
Yeah,
that every human falls onto.
exactly.
For an example, you studied marketing. Advertisements on
30
television.
seconds. man.
The first 30 seconds
Exactly.
play a very big role. You should have said
Everything and anything that will entice me to come and buy your product.
exactly.
Exactly.
Which explains why when I get on stage, before even greeting the people, I make a sound. It's not something that is supposed to make sense. I usually say "ite," "night," "light," "fight," "quite," "sight," "right," "height," "might." It's not words. It's not a sentence. But at the tone of voice that I normally say it to whoever who's in the audience. When you're on your phone and I say that a high-pitched voice, why am I doing that? Give me attention. Let's do this. By the time I finish with that, you would have probably put down your phone and think, what's that?
Like, okay, guy, keep
Yeah.
on. Then you greet us.
There.
Whoa, Master Taz.
Exactly.
I feel you, man.
Those are some of the things that play a big role. We have quite a number of poets in the country. I notice how maybe some of them would say, greetings to everyone in the house. My first poem is entitled. By the time you get to your first poem, unless, of course, that person is really interested,
Yeah.
we've been to environments where the people you present to don't care about what you are there to do. So it's in a way also maybe forcing the person to give you attention. We grab attention by all means. I mean, poetry is fully dependent for the bigger aspect on your voice. Music comes in extra. If you're privileged enough to have somebody play with you on stage, then
Better.
even better. But in a case where you are alone out there, also, whilst on that, I'm thinking about a number of things. Dress code. Very, 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 very,
Still on presentation as well. Yeah.
very, very important. I'm glad that the culture in the country amongst poets is not the one we have maybe in places like South Africa. I don't know for why. Most of the maybe slam poets that I've seen in South Africa are not so clean.
Now they should mention it.
Think about it.
There's a look. But it seems to be more for a creatives thing.
Yeah.
When you tend to look at more creative people, they tend to almost be borderline hobos in a sense.
Exactly.
But naseleqala lokukhuluma.
You then get to
Yeah.
one of the influential young people in the country, Dinowe Fagutse, said the first 7 seconds of interaction with a person determine whether or not we're going to work or not.
7 seconds.
Well, to her, it was down to 7 seconds, which is, we haven't said anything to each other. I've only seen you. And
From that assessment.
from that assessment, one determines whether or not we're going to work. If we are taking the poetry to a space where corporate is interested, if those are the rules that apply, then dress code comes top of the
Says a
list.
lot.
Exactly. I've tried by all means to make sure that when I'm on stage, I look the part. So much so that I think for the last poetry event that I had,
Your show. Yes.
yes, I went as far as designing
Yeah.
something that would be catchy to the eye.
Most.
Yeah.
Yo. Yeah, a lot has been said. A lot has been said. And I do pray that you guys have picked on some very valuable points over there. I, for one, from what Maja has been saying, through everything that he said anyways, I picked that he took the one situation that could have left him weak in terms of self-esteem, of course.
Yeah.
It could have led him to depression or whatnot. But he used it as his source of strength, you know, to be in that creative space and write poetry, you know, in that moment of solitude where he felt alone. He expressed himself. And look at where he is today. And nurturing this talent and this gift of yours. I mean, looking at the fact that from preschool guys, solo utanayo lento. Sure enough, he might not have understood it at first. But upon realizing what he had and what this could be, he then worked on it by finding those key platforms that would make him more confident, make him more eloquent, you know, and learning more about this particular art that you work on. So you have your presentation, your gestures, your 7-second moment of influencing me, so to speak. And that's a lot, guys. So any parting words to aspiring poets out there? Someone who thinks that maybe poetry is just as simple as writing roses are red, you know?
Being true to who you are. It goes without saying, we are influenced by a lot of people.
True.
Being true to who you are and praying for your craft. Can never emphasize how important the thing is. Getting into a creative space or the arts exposes you to a lot of things. Making it there requires you to be at a spiritual level. So prayer forms the foundation and everything else that comes with it. Don't lose the dream, being true, and pray. Can never emphasize how important prayer is.
Guys, you've heard it. Thank you so much, Mr. Ngonyane, man, for coming through.
Pleasure.
It's been a blessing to have you share your story with us, and of course, we do hope to have you in future episodes. You know, as we grow along this journey, of course, we get to understand different sides of people. It's not only Motivation Wednesday that we have. So, thank you so much, young people, old people, wherever you are. Do have a splendid day. Be blessed, awesome. We love you here, Joburg Flavored. It's been a wonderful session, and it's Joburg Flavored.
Add more flavor.
Yeah.